Welcome to the Self-Growth Nerds podcast. I'm your host, Marie, a courage coach, creative soul, and adventure seeker. Since through hiking the Pacific Crest Trail in 2019, I'm on a mission to help you embrace your most confident self so you can achieve your dreams too. If you're eager for deep conversations, big questions, and meaningful connections, join me on the quest to discovering how we can create a more magical and memorable life. Hello, nerds! How are you? I'm good. I recently got back from Florida, had a good time at a work event with my friend Allison, and then chilling out with my parents at their place there with Ollie. We played a lot of pickleball, we went to Disney World, and it went by super fast. Now I'm back to you, and today we are talking about how to be calmer, or how to be less scattered, and therefore calmer. And I'm not going to tell you to meditate, or do exercise, or scroll Instagram less, or sleep well, or drink more water, blah, blah, blah. That's boring. We all know. It's pretty obvious. No, I want to look at this from a whole other perspective. So I'm going to share this episode was inspired by something that happened to me in Florida. I got myself very much worked up, and it made me realize how much better I've been at this. Just like the stark contrast, experiencing those feelings of nervousness and disorganizedness made me realize it's been a long time since I used to feel this way so much more often. And so I want to talk about this. I sat down and reflected on what are ways of thinking or ways of doing that I've changed over the last few years that have allowed me to be calmer more of the time. And I've come up with 3 main ones that I'm going to discuss in today's episode. But first, I want to tell you about that moment that happened. And I also want you to think of a moment recently where you were not calm, where you worked yourself up about something, and let's get curious together, okay? So what happened for me is I decided a while back that I was going to start interviewing people that I look up to on this podcast. You met Rachel and Meg in the last few episodes, and one of the episodes that's coming soon is with someone called Andy J. Pizza. No, Pizza is not his real name, but it's his artist name. And Andy J. Pizza is an illustrator that I've looked up to for a long time. When I was an illustrator, he was one of my main heroes. He has a podcast called Creative Pep Talk, and I've listened to hours and hours and hours of his podcast. And yes, it's someone I feel a deep resonance with. And I decided, you know what, I'm going to reach out to this person and ask if they want to interview on my podcast. I was like, he's not going to say yes. He's way too much of a big shot for this. And it just took a few minutes. He replied to my email and he was like, yeah, let's do it. Booked it. And I was blown away. So I don't know if I've told you about that, but that's a lesson in itself. Like sometimes you just have to do it even though you think you're going to get rejected, because when you're willing to hear a no, you are this much more likely to hear a yes, which is what happened with me and Andy. So he booked his time in my calendar. What I do is I send a link with lots of availability in my calendar, and he could decide when he wanted to do the interview. So he booked a time, and then I realized a few days later that I had not managed my availability well, and he had booked the same day that I was flying into Miami. So a few hours after I got to Miami, I had this interview with Andy. So usually when I have an interview, I like to be in my office with my mic, with the door closed, so I can be fully focused on the person in front of me. But I was like, well, oh shit, my mistake, so I'm just going to own it and I'm going to figure it out. I'm going to find a way to make it work. I found a co-working space in Miami, a WeWork. I rented a room there for the recording. What happened, though, is I ended up, when I got to Miami, getting an Uber or a Lyft to the WeWork and forgetting my phone in the Lyft. So then I got to WeWork and it took like a whole hour to figure this out, get my phone back. And then so that made me stressed. And then I had a room for exactly the amount of time that the recording was going to last. So basically, let's say the recording with Andy finished at 2. The room I rented finished at 2 as well. And just before I was doing the interview, I was having issues with the Wi-Fi, scrambling to make the Wi-Fi work. It worked but 2 minutes ahead of time. And then I did the interview. It was amazing. But in the last 3, 4, 5 minutes before my rental period finished, there was this guy on the other side of the door looking at me, waiting for me to finish, which meant I felt super self-conscious and kind of finished the interview in a rush. So when you listen to the interview, you might notice that I cut it abruptly at the end. And so I did that, and then I felt super annoyed with myself because I love being present. It's really important for me to listen deeply and not to be scattered, not to rush someone else. And so after that, just that whole series of events ended up with me feeling super frustrated and flustered. And so I sat with my journal and I was like, okay, let's walk back the cat. That's an expression I learned from Martha Beck in her book, The Way of Integrity. Basically, the question I asked myself is, what happened? What led me here? Ken, I want you to ask yourself the same question about the moment that you chose to investigate. The question that I asked myself is, when did I ignore my little voice? Where did I stray from my truth? Let's walk back the cat. Okay, so the first time I didn't listen to my little voice is when I saw that Andy had scheduled the interview to be the day I was arriving in Miami. If it had been anyone else, I would have asked them to reschedule. But part of me was putting him on a pedestal and feeling he's this important person that I look up to. He probably has a very busy schedule, so I cannot ask him to reschedule. I would have done it with anyone else. Not anyone else, but people that I consider as equals, I would have asked them to reschedule. But for some reason, I just put him on a pedestal, even though we are equals, right? We are. I believe that, but a part of me felt like I was less than, and so it was not acceptable to ask for this. So that's the first, in this series of events, that's the first place where I just strayed from my truth. Then I started telling myself, I got this, I can do this, I can do this, I can figure this out, I can figure this out. And it's okay. Sometimes we tell ourselves, okay, yes, I can, I know I can. And it's okay to say, I know I can, but I don't want to. It's important for me when I interview someone that I can give them my full focus and attention. And that's just easier for me when I'm in my office with my internet, with my mic, with the door closed. So I know I can figure it out, do it somewhere else, but I don't want to. Sometimes we try to pep ourselves up. I can do this. And yes, it's true. We're so strong, but it's also okay to surrender and to be like, I can, but I don't want to. So that's the second thing. And then the third thing is I booked the room at the WeWork was just $10 an hour. And I was like, okay, I just need it for an hour. So I'm just going to rent it for an hour. Just take what you need, not anything more. And that was a decision that I made from a place of scarcity. It would have been so helpful to give myself space, to book 1 hour ahead of time and then 1 hour after, half an hour after, to make sure that there's no rush, to make sure that I have plenty. And then the last time where I strayed from where I didn't listen to my little voice is about a few minutes before we finished the interview, a few minutes before my rental period was over. I could have concluded the conversation. I had plenty of time to conclude the conversation, but there was one more question that I wanted to ask him. And part of me, I had like this little fight in my brain. Part of me was saying, just end it here. And another part of me was like, no, we really want to ask him this question. And it was a big question. Big, important question that you can't really answer in 3 minutes. But a part of me was, again, scarcity mindset. No, I want to ask him everything. Instead of trusting, you know what, the conversation that we've had is good enough. I don't need more. It's okay. No, so I listened to the part of me that was like, more. Let's ask him one more. See the difference in energy? Instead of being grounded and calm, it's like, no, we need more. So these are the places where when I walk back the cat and get curious, where I just didn't listen to my gut, where I didn't listen to my little voice. So get curious about you and about that moment that you've chosen to analyze. When did you ignore your little voice? And if you want to pause this podcast and do that in your journal, please feel free to do so. Now, we're going to jump into the part of the episode where I share 3 ways to feel calmer and be less scattered. So number one is to honor your needs as if you were a very important person, because you are. To trust that little voice. I'm going to give you lots of examples. Recently, like a few months ago, a friend of my partner who works in environment, she asked me if I wanted to be part of a environmentally focused book club. And my first gut instinct was no, I'm not that interested. There's different sorts of books that I prefer to read. That's what my little voice said. But then another one came up that said, oh no, but Marie, you should really go. Like, you should get out of your comfort zone, and it's really important to know about these things, and you should be more knowledgeable about these things. It was like the people-pleasing voice. And you know when there's a should, that it's a red flag. You should join the book club. That was the red flag that I completely ignored, and I just said yes, when deep down I just knew. And that meant that as the time went by, I just felt more and more resistance, and ended up telling them that I was getting out of the book club. And instead of just trusting that little voice the first time it spoke to me. So think back to moments where your little voice had warned you, don't get into this relationship. Don't say yes. Don't say yes to hanging out with that friend. You know you're not going to want to. Or don't say yes to a concert on a Wednesday evening. You know you're not going to have the energy. And you just, oh no, I'm going to be fine. I got this. Like, I want to be a good friend. Like, we haven't seen each other in a while, so I should say yes. You're like, think about all the little times, and even in the last month, where your little voice spoke to you and you just ignored it. Instead of being true to yourself, you tried being true to what's expected of you. Or not being true to what's expected of you. That's not the right word. You chose to comply. Instead of being true to yourself, you chose to comply to external expectations, or your perception of what others might be expecting of you. Honoring your needs also means being more of a diva. And what I mean by that is, like, think about rock stars. Think about, like, I love watching documentaries like the Taylor Swift documentary, the Pink documentary, see what their life is like. And some people say, oh, these rock stars are divas. But what I see happening is they have to take really fucking good care of themselves, because they are the product. They are the product. So if they're not feeling good, it all goes to shit. So they have to take care of themselves with the utmost importance. And we don't tend to allow ourselves to do that, because for many reasons, but one of them is, especially as women, we've been conditioned, men too, we've been conditioned as women to put everyone else's needs first, and men have been conditioned to be strong and provide for the family, instead of asking themselves, like, what do I need right now? Instead of asking ourselves, like, what do I need to fill my reservoir so that I can be present for the people that I love? One example of this is Ollie and I like to go climbing sometimes. And I realized, so he likes to go climbing after work, and I get hungry. And sometimes my partner, it's like he could not eat for 2 days and he would be fine. But for me, it affects my mood and my energy so much more. So he would want to go climbing after work and then have dinner around 8 p.m., for example. That just doesn't work for me. My belly hurts, I get dizzy, I get grumpy. And so I decided, you know what? I need to eat before I climb. That's it. That's honoring my needs. And there was this one time where we didn't have food in the fridge. We were trying to find somewhere where I could get food before going to the climbing gym. And that place was closed, and I could see my partner being like, can you just eat after? Like, that would be so much more simple. And I had to decide in that moment, am I going to people please and make his life easier and just say, okay, yeah, let's go. Let's just go climb. Or am I going to honor my needs, even though it might be annoying for the other person? And I decided, no. Honoring my need is what's most important. I need to eat. I need to eat right now. And so if you want to go to the climbing gym, you go for it, and I'm going to meet you there. But this is my priority. And it takes seeing yourself as a rock star. It takes seeing yourself as a very important person, because you are. You have to get on board with that. Otherwise, you're always going to get scattered because you will put yourself last. And one last example that I have is a few years ago, I think it was like 3 years ago, I said, I want a Swiffer. I want like a super easy way to clean the floor. And I think Ollie was going to the hardware store, and he brought back this kind of like a mop. He said like it was going to be more sustainable because, with Swiffer, there's like sheets that you throw in the trash after. And I was like, great. Yeah, it's more sustainable, and I know I'm never going to do it. I just know that if I'm going to clean the floor, it has to be the easiest thing. So I didn't do it. I didn't use the thing he bought for like 3 years. And recently, I just decided I want a fucking Swiffer. I don't care. Like, I know it's not the best for the environment, but I want clean floors. And so I went to the hardware store and got myself a Swiffer and had a great time washing my floors. And yes, I'm going to make conscientious decisions for the environment when I can, but then there are also moments where I'm going to decide to prioritize my well-being. It's going to be a balance. There's a question that I like to ask myself sometimes, and it's, what would Oprah do in this situation? So the Swiffer might not be the best example because she probably has people cleaning her home for her. But like when it comes to the interview, the podcast interview, she'd been like, well, I'm Oprah. Let's just reschedule. She would have got like one of her assistants to ask the person to reschedule. I think we have to be difficult, to be disagreeable. Or what we think is being difficult, what we think is being disagreeable. And not from a place of stubborn ego, but from a place of deep love for ourselves. And this might be annoying for some people because, like I've told you before, people pleasing is called people pleasing for a reason. It pleases others when you bend yourself in all kinds of positions for them. So when you decide to respect your needs first and foremost, of course some people their feathers are going to be ruffled. Let it be. Let it be this way so that you can fill your reservoir, feel better for yourself, but also feel better so that you can be more present for others. Okay, so what would Oprah do in this situation? Replace Oprah with whoever you want. With the book club example, Oprah would have been like, yeah, no, ain't got no time for this. Thank you for the invitation. Goodbye. Okay, so that was number 1. Honoring your needs as if you were a very important person, because you are. Now, number 2, do less. Say no more often. I used to have like one activity every evening of the week and do a bunch of things on the weekends. And now I've decided it's only one activity per weekend day. Only one. The rest of the day is for reading on the sofa, taking baths, going to the grocery store, cleaning my house with my Swiffer. And on weekday evenings, it's every other one is open. So basically, if I do something on Wednesday night, I want to have Thursday night open. I want to have Thursday night to relax. Okay? Every other weekday evening is for me. And it might be different if you have kids, but I know some of our friends who have kids, they do this thing where one parent is responsible for the kids every other day. So let's say it's my day off and I'm not responsible for the kids tonight. I can stay home if I want. I can read in the bath, but it's up to my partner to be the main resource for them. And I know on the days that I'm off that I can plan something with my friends. I don't have to ask permission or anything. That's how they make it work. So that's one thing. And then another thing is no meetings for me on Mondays and Fridays, and no meetings before 12. And again, like part of me, when I started considering this, was like, well, Marie, you're being difficult. Like you're being a brat. You're being a princess. But I just love to have Mondays and Fridays to me and have no rush in the mornings. If that's being a princess, then so be it. I am one. But I think it sucks that there's a negative connotation to choosing to put ourselves first, and we need to rewrite that narrative. Yes, I am very privileged to be able to make those decisions. But I want to fight for a world in which more people have access to these kinds of decisions. And if you have a full-time job, it might be more challenging to make these kinds of decisions, right? You might not be able to have a say on when your meetings are. But you can get curious as to how you can make your way in that direction, how you can get closer to honoring your needs. You might be able to ask yourself the question, what's removable? What could I say no to? What kind of commitments could I get out of? Just like, instead of being super resistant, if you find yourself being like, well, that's easy for you to say, Marie, have an open mind. Like, ask yourself, maybe, like, what could work? Instead of making assumptions. I had a podcast listener message me on Instagram and saying, oh my God, Marie, I went to see my boss and I asked them for a 3-month off and they said yes. I never thought it would be possible, but they said yes. So you never know. Don't assume what's possible and what's not. Try to keep an open mind. Another thing that I suggest doing is choosing which friends to dedicate more time to. So I do this exercise every now and then where I take a sheet of my journal and I split it into 3. And let's say at the top is me. I write me in a little circle, and then in the first part of the page, the first tier, I write down the names of the people I want to dedicate more time to in this season of my life. And then in the second tier, it's kind of like I see it as I'm the planet, and then who do I want in my orbit? Who do I want in my close orbit? Who do I want in the second tier? And who is in the third tier where I I love them, but they're just not people that I will focus on in this season. So in the first tier are people that they're my most important folks. That like, I want to babysit their kids. I want to invite them over for dinner. I want to be there for them when they're going through something hard. In the second tier is people that I like to see and make time for, but more like once a month or once every 2 months, like go for coffee, like peers, friends that I enjoy spending time with, but they don't get a seat at the main table of my life in this season. And then, like I said, in the third tier is like, we'll see each other if we do, but it's also not a big deal if we don't. I might see them maybe twice a year and love seeing them, but again, if they want to hang out every week, it's gonna be a no. So that's been a really important exercise in my life in the last few years. And like, it's helped me focus. Okay, these are the friends in the first year. These are the kids that I'm willing to babysit. And the others, love them, but no, like my focus is on these ones. And again, it's about removing the shoulds. Oh, I should because we've been friends for so long. I should be there to babysit their kids. Or I should say yes when they invite me over. I should go to their wedding in another state because, we're friends since high school. You can keep believing this if you want. You can comply to the shoulds, but at what cost? You have to be honest with yourself. Oh, I should say yes because it's going to hurt their feeling. Well, you know what? I'm willing to risk hurting someone else's feelings in order to feel calm, to feel more at peace. And it's up to you if you are or if you're not. If you have children, I don't, so I cannot speak for you, but I want to suggest questioning the standards. Sounds like there's a lot more standards than there were when I was a kid. Maybe you don't need to write little invitations for the birthday parties. Maybe you don't need to create little gift bags for everyone for your kid's birthday party. Unless it brings you joy, you've got to get curious. Oh, does this bring me joy, or am I doing it from a place of should? Am I doing it from a place of, well, I have to comply because all the other parents are doing it? Just get curious and give yourself permission to say fuck that. To say, you know what? In this house, when there's a birthday party, we don't do gift bags. And so what if we get judged? I'd rather have my Saturday to read my book than create little gift bags that I don't care about. I'd rather be at peace and be judged than stress myself out, do something I don't want to do to try and micromanage what other parents might think of me. Let them be wrong about you. Let's say there's a parent out there that thinks, oh, she doesn't care. She doesn't make an effort. Is that true? Like, you know who you are. You are the number one person who knows yourself best. And so you've got to remember that. Let other people be wrong about you for your inner peace. And one book I recommend when it comes to doing less and knowing what to say no to is The Subtle Art of Not Giving a Fuck by Mark Manson. It helps you figure out, okay, what is it that I value? What is it that brings me joy? And what can I remove? What can I start saying no to? What have I been pretending to care about that really I just don't. I just don't care about deeply. I'm just pretending. What if I was true to myself? What if I only focused on what brought me joy and what truly lights me up and what's really important to me? And let all the rest go, no matter what people make it mean about me. Okay, so that was number 2. Do less, say no more often. Number 3, inject space in your schedule. Get there early, finish on time. Gonna give you lots of examples. So getting there early. I tend to, if I'm going somewhere and Google Maps tell me it's gonna take 30 minutes, I tend to leave 30 minutes ahead of time. And you know what? Very often shit hits the fan. I was going to a spinning class the other day, and it takes 20 minutes. It's a 20-minute walk to get there, and I left 20 minutes ahead of time. And there was construction work on the street, so the police was managing the traffic lights, and it took forever to be able to cross the streets. And I was so annoyed with them, with how long it took to cross the streets. But that's what we do sometimes. We blame the circumstances, or we blame others, instead of taking full responsibility. Instead of saying, you know what, I should have left early. And then that would not have been a problem. When we were leaving Florida, we got to the airport in Miami 4 hours early. It said to be there 3 hours early, but my parents were giving us a ride, and they really wanted to make sure that we were not going to get stuck in Miami traffic. So we ended up getting there 4 hours early, and it was so luxurious. Felt so good. They changed our gates 2 times, and that wasn't a problem because we had plenty of time. I ended up finding a cafe and reading books at the cafe. Almost forgot that I was at the airport. Felt so chill. Why not? We want to be so efficient, but why not just get there early? Just carry a book with you and add space in your schedule. So again, that's something that I tend to do, that I'm getting much better at, where when I create my calendar, I always create my calendar ahead of time. I put things in there, one thing after the other, and sometimes forget to think about transport. It's like I think I'm going to teleport between writing an email and being in the spinning gym. We need to think about transport. We need to think about breaks. We need to remember that we're not machines, that we're human, that we need time to breathe, that we need transition time between tasks. We try to be so efficient and use up every minute, every drop of the lemon, but that's just exhausting. So for me, I've learned that I have to look at my schedule and be like, damn, there's a lot of empty space, and almost feel uncomfortable about it. It almost feels dangerous. We've learned, we've been conditioned that it's not safe. Empty space is not safe. But you know what? We've got to unlearn that. Because to me, I believe it's a rhythm that's so much more humane. Otherwise, we just are fueled by adrenaline, and our nervous system is always jacked up and go, 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 instead of being able to breathe and move through life in a way that's sustainable and finish on time. So choose how long a task will take you instead of leaving it up to chance, and practice building integrity with yourself by respecting the time block that you have chosen. So you know what they say, if you decide it's going to take 3 weeks to do something, it's going to take 3 weeks. And if you decide it's going to take 3 hours, it's going to take 3 hours. So I love to, again, plan my week ahead of time and decide, okay, how long is it going to take me to record this podcast? Let's say 2 hours. Okay, I'm going to put 2 hours in my schedule, and then practice respecting that. Same thing with coaching sessions. Respecting the length of the coaching session instead of bleeding over. Because when I organize my schedule, I do so with my prefrontal cortex in a very intentional way. Let's say I'm going to leave 15 minutes between each coaching session. This 15 minutes is designed for me to be able to stand up, walk away from my office, drink some water, have a snack. And so if I bleed over in that free time, I am compromising that time for me, and it's going to add up if I don't let my nervous system settle down and calm down between sessions. If, let's say, I decide recording my podcast is going to take 2 hours and I end up spending 3, maybe I'm going to skip lunch, or I'm going to skip the walk that I had decided to take. And again, that is going to add up, and I might feel more exhausted, more scattered at the end of the day, because I had planned my day in a way that felt sustainable, that felt honoring of my needs, and I've just sacrificed that. And often when I go over time, is when I cross the line into perfectionism or people pleasing. And that damages my peace. That drains my energy. Maybe if I do it once or twice, that's fine. But if it becomes a habit, that's when I see my energy depleting. And it's probably very similar for you. So you want to notice the thought in your mind that leads you to go over. Very often, we make our schedule with our prefrontal cortex, like I was saying, in an intentional way. And then in the moment, it's not the same part of our brain that's driving the show. It's the more primal, primitive brain that's like, oh, I want this person to like me. I want them to feel like they've had enough. Or I want this podcast to be really good. Like I need to re-record this part because it's not clear enough because I want my listeners to get the most out of this. See, the energy is very different. It's less grounded. It's more heightened. It's from a survival place. You want to practice being aware of when you cross the line, when you start acting from a place of survival, from a place of scarcity, from a place of wanting things to be good enough, wanting you to be liked, okay? Because that's often when you start depleting your energy. Go back to the earlier question. What would you do if you were a very important person? Because you are. Think about Barack Obama. I bet when he has an appointment, he finishes on time. And he's not staying longer for people to have positive thoughts about him. He's like, this is what I do. This is who I am. Moving on. Got a whole day ahead of me. Not trying to people please because he knows who he is. Same thing with you. You've got to know who you are and you've got to trust that you are enough and that you don't need to overcompensate. Sometimes I think, oh, but I have an hour of nothing after this. Like, I can stay on the call or I can keep making this podcast better. That's fine. No, we need space. Spaciousness. We need nothingness. We need time to chill for our nervous system to calm down. Otherwise, if we bleed into our empty time, we just get all jacked up and end the day feeling super empty. You know it. You've experienced it, I'm sure. So protect your peace, as this hiker person on Instagram says. Protect your peace by finishing on time. And if you finish earlier, oh my God, what luxury. Sometimes if I decide it's going to take me 2 hours to record a podcast, it takes me 1 hour. I'm like, ooh, wow, I'm amazing. I'm the boss. Instead of being like, okay, well, I'm going to answer emails and all the tasks that I had planned doing tomorrow, I'm going to do them now while I have time. Well, you can do that. But why not just chill? Why not just enjoy how badass you are and, give yourself some time in the sun? I don't know. It's okay. We gotta practice feeling safe with spaciousness. Feeling safe, putting ourselves first. Like sometimes I ask my clients, what would feel luxurious for you? What would it look like to take care of yourself in a luxurious way? And what they tell me very often is pretty basic. Oh, like waking up with no alarm one morning. That's totally doable, right? It's not like going to a 5-star hotel in Paris tomorrow. So ask yourself this question: what would be luxurious? And you'll be surprised how simple and achievable those things can be sometimes. And not for everyone. Again, I'm aware that many of us are very privileged, that I'm in a privileged situation, but see pockets, how you can create pockets of luxurious self-care for yourself. It might just be going to sit by the river for 20 minutes. That might be what you need. Okay, so let's summarize. 3 ways to feel calmer, feel less scattered. Number 1 is honoring your needs as if you were a very important person, because you are. Number 2, do less. Say no more often. Ask yourself what can be removed. What is it that you want to focus on, that you care deeply about, and how can you let go of the rest? Yes, it's going to require people feeling uncomfortable, And that's the price to pay for inner peace. And number 3, inject space in your schedule. Get there early, finish on time. Okay? I've given you a lot to reflect on this week. I hope this was useful for you. I would love it if you messaged me on Instagram at Self-Growth Nerds, your number one takeaway, the one nugget that you want to leave with, that you want to apply in your life. And it's going to be super useful to actually decide what, in this episode where I gave you lots of tips, what's the one that you want to take action on? Come find me and tell me. And just telling me is going to make it this much more real. It's going to make your commitment to this change you want to make that much more real. So Self-Growth Nerds on Instagram, come find me. I want to hear about what you've taken away from this episode. And I wish you a beautiful, calming, peaceful week. Do your best. Bye. If you love what you're hearing on the Self-Growth Nerds podcast and you want individual help finding a new direction for your life and developing the courage to make your dreams a reality, you have to check out how we can work together on selfgrowthnerds.com or message me on Instagram at selfgrowthnerds. My clients say they would have needed that support years ago. So if you're tired of feeling like you're wasting your life, don't wait. Get in touch now, and I cannot wait to meet you.